Nurse Miller, your patients are waiting. Don't leave us.
When police broke down the hotel door, only the camera was still recording. The bed was still warm, the TV flickered with static. But the guests were gone. This was Huntsville, Texas, 1989. A newlywed couple checked into the Brighton Hotel and vanished before sunrise. What investigators found inside that room would uncover decades of secrets buried in its walls, and a darkness that refused to die. When police broke down the hotel door, only the camera was still recording. The sheets on the bed were still warm. The TV hummed with static, and a faint smell of old perfume drifted through the air. But the room was empty. The guest book said Daniel and Claire Morris had checked in just before 9 that night. The front desk clerk remembered them clearly. A young couple, friendly, polite, tired from the road. They had asked for a quiet room with a view of the trees. He gave them room 217. It was supposed to be just another night at the Brighton Hotel in Huntsville, Texas. But by morning, their car was still parked outside, and no one ever saw them again. The Brighton wasn't always a place people feared. When it first opened in 1954, it was the pride of Walker County. A roadside gem built along Highway 19, all brick and glass, a sign that glowed soft amber against the Texas night. Families stopped there on long drives. Truckers called it a safe haven from the endless miles of blacktop. The coffee was strong, the beds were clean, and the owner, a man named Richard Brighton, promised Southern comfort and modern charm. But beneath that promise was land that didn't want to be built on. During construction, workers complained of tools going missing, of footsteps echoing in empty halls, of a strange humming sound that came from the ground itself when the wind blew from the east. One man, a local mason, refused to return after finding his measuring tape coiled neatly on the ground, soaked in water though it hadn't rained in weeks. Another worker quit after swearing he heard a child crying beneath the foundation. The foreman brushed it all off as superstition. But when they dug the main well, they hit something unexpected, a wooden coffin small enough for a child. The sheriff was called, the remains quietly moved, and the hole sealed with concrete. The newspapers never reported it, but the crew said the air changed that day. It grew heavier, colder, and the site never felt right again. When the Brighton finally opened, it was beautiful. Red carpet in the lobby, brass keys behind the counter, and a chandelier that shimmered like gold dust. Travelers loved it. Honeymooners booked the upper rooms for the view. But strange things began almost immediately. Guests complained about whispers in the hallways when no one else was there. Housekeepers found rooms rearranged overnight. Lamps moved, curtains tied in knots, mirrors turned to face the wall. Some laughed it off. Others checked out early, pale and quiet, unwilling to explain. The local paper ran a story calling the Brighton the friendliest hotel in Texas. But inside those walls, something else was waking up. Richard Brighton, the owner, lived on site with his wife and their only daughter, Evelyn. She was 9 years old, bright, shy, and loved to draw. Staff remembered her wandering the hallways with a notebook, sketching guests and pretending to be the hotel's little manager. One morning in 1955, she vanished. No forced entry, no signs of struggle. Her shoes were found neatly placed by the lobby door, her notebook open on the front desk. Inside, on the last page, she had drawn a picture of the hotel, with one extra window that didn't exist. Richard and his wife searched for weeks. They drained the well, tore through walls, even called in a private investigator from Houston. Nothing. The police ruled it a missing child case. Locals whispered she'd fallen into the woods. But staff swore they still heard her humming in the halls late at night, a tune that sounded like a nursery rhyme. The Brightons left the hotel a year later. They sold it quietly to a man named Walter Crane, who ran it until the late 60s. He told reporters the building had moods. Sometimes everything worked perfectly. Doors opened smoothly, lights glowed warmly. Other nights the plumbing failed. Bulbs burst and guests complained of cold drafts sweeping through locked rooms. Walter joked that Evelyn was still around, helping him keep the place clean. But one morning, he arrived to find his office door locked from the inside. When he forced it open, his desk was covered in scratches. The word "stay" carved deeply into the wood. He blamed vandals, but the front door had been bolted shut all night. After that, the staff started quitting. A maid reported seeing a little girl standing at the end of the hall staring, hair dripping wet. A repairman found a small handprint on the inside of a sealed window. Even the guests noticed whispers, shadows that lingered too long, the ringing of a service bell when no one was at the counter. Walter tried to keep the business afloat, but the rumors spread faster than he could fight them. Some said the land was cursed. others that the hotel was built on old burial ground. Whatever the truth, something beneath that structure wanted to be remembered. By 1960, the Brighton had lost its glow. Highway expansion routes left it cut off from the main road and business slowed to a trickle. But locals still drove by and swore they saw lights on inside, long after it had supposedly closed for the night. A deputy once stopped to check and found the front doors unlocked. Inside, everything was spotless, as if the staff had just stepped away. The guest book lay open on the counter. The last name written was E. Brighton. The ink was still wet. Even today, decades later, some say the hotel breathes on cold nights. You can see mist pour from the broken windows, hear faint laughter, and the clinking of dishes from the empty dining hall. Those who've been inside say the wallpaper feels warm to the touch, as if the building itself remembers every person who ever crossed its halls. And maybe it does. Because places like the Brighton don't just die, they wait. And sometimes when the night is quiet enough, they call someone back. Someone willing to listen. Sometimes when the night is quiet enough, they call someone back. Someone willing to listen. And that's exactly what happened to Walter Crane. After the Brightons left, he was the only one brave or foolish enough to stay. He'd been the head clerk under Richard Brighton, and when the owners fled, he bought the hotel at half its value. Locals thought he was trying to prove something to himself. Maybe he didn't believe in ghosts, or maybe he didn't believe he could fail. For the first few months, everything was calm. He repainted the lobby, replaced the carpets, and even reopened the diner. Business returned slowly. Travelers came and went. The register filled with names, and for a while, the Brighton seemed normal again. But the calm didn't last. It started small, things only Walter would notice. The phone ringing at odd hours with no one on the line. The faint sound of running water from empty rooms. A guest key appearing on the counter after being locked in the drawer. He ignored it at first, but then one night while closing up, he saw something that changed him. The reflection in the lobby mirror showed a figure behind him, a young girl standing near the staircase. He turned instantly, but the stairs were empty. The mirror, however, still showed her watching him. Walter smashed it with his fist. When staff arrived the next morning, he told them someone had broken in. They didn't question it, but from that day on, he refused to walk near that staircase after dark. The housekeeper, Martha Jean, remembered finding him asleep in the lobby chair one morning, clutching a Polaroid photo. It showed the hallway outside room 217 dimly lit, empty except for a shadow near the ceiling. "She's trying to tell me something," he whispered. Martha asked who. Walter just said, "Evelyn." He swore the girl was still in the building, trapped somehow, trying to communicate. When the staff laughed, he grew angry. He started keeping journals, recording every noise, every draft, every temperature drop. Some of those notebooks still exist today, kept by the local historical society. The entries grow more frantic each week, pages filled with timestamps, scribbles of "she knows" and "the well still breathes." By 1965, the hotel's reputation had turned from charming to cursed. Guests told stories of doors unlocking themselves, of faint humming echoing through vents, and of small wet footprints leading toward the elevator shaft. Walter's sanity seemed to unravel with the building. His wife left him, saying he'd started talking to someone who wasn't there. Workers reported hearing him whispering to the walls late at night. "You can rest now," he'd say. "I'm listening." Then one morning he didn't open the front doors. When a maid went to check, she found his office locked from the inside. They broke it down and found him sitting in his chair, pale and trembling, staring at his desk. The word "stay" had been scratched deep into the wood, the grooves filled with dust. He claimed it wasn't him. He said he'd heard the sound of nails scraping while he slept. The police investigated but found nothing. Still, Walter's mind was gone. Within days, he sold the property to a development firm and left town. He was found years later in a rest home outside Houston, telling nurses he could still hear the bell from the front desk ringing at 2:17 every night. The Brighton changed hands 3 times after that. None of the owners lasted more than a year. One man died in a car crash, another vanished during a hunting trip, and the third, an investor from Dallas, simply left one night and never came back. By the 1970s, the building was nearly abandoned. Only a few rooms were still in use, rented by traveling workers or drifters who couldn't afford the chain motels off the new highway. It was during that quiet decay that the stories grew darker. A couple passing through claimed they heard children running in the hall, laughing softly, though the hotel was empty except for them. A truck driver swore he saw a woman standing by the reception desk, hair wet, holding a key. When he blinked, she was gone, but the bell rang behind him. Another guest found the water in the sink turning black. The plumber who came to inspect it said the pipes were fine. but his flashlight caught movement inside the drain like something breathing. He left without collecting his pay. In 1974, an electrical fire broke out in the basement. Firefighters managed to contain it before it reached the upper floors. But the smoke behaved strangely. It came up from below, thick and cold. When they broke into the basement, they found the walls lined with photographs. Hundreds of them. All black and white, all showing people who had once stayed at the Brighton. No one knew how they got there. Many had faces scratched out. But every single photo had the same dark shape standing in the background. A small silhouette near a window or doorway. The fire chief sealed the basement and recommended the hotel be condemned. But somehow it stayed open for a few more years, run by a skeleton staff. Locals started calling it the place that remembers. Because no matter who owned it, the same things kept happening. Lights flickering in patterns, phones ringing from empty rooms, faint knocks that came in threes. Some thought it was the ghost of little Evelyn Brighton. Others believed something older had taken her place. A spirit born from the land itself, feeding on the fear of those who entered. There was one report filed by a sheriff's deputy, claiming he saw a figure in the window of room 217 weeks after the hotel shut down. He described her as a young girl, head tilted, staring straight at him. When he looked again, the curtain fell back into place and the light went out. Today, no one knows exactly when the Brighton died. There was no official closing, no ceremony, no announcement. It simply faded away, like a story people stopped telling out loud. But the few who've been inside since then say the air feels different. Thicker, heavier, as if the walls remember every name written in that guest book. And maybe they do. Because some places don't fade into history. They wait, watching, listening, hoping someone else will check in one last time. Watching, listening, hoping someone else will check in one last time. And someone did. By 1989, the Brighton Hotel had become a ghost of itself. Half the windows boarded, paint peeling from the sign, weeds creeping across the once busy parking lot. But to travelers passing through Huntsville, it was still a convenient stop on a long, empty stretch of highway. That's what drew Daniel and Claire Morris there on the night of September 14th. Newlyweds from Baton Rouge, heading west to visit family in Dallas. They weren't the kind of people who believed in ghost stories. Daniel worked in insurance. Claire was a school teacher. They just needed a quiet place to rest for the night. The front desk clerk that evening, an older man named Joseph Ray, later told police that the couple was pleasant, smiling, normal. They paid in cash, took their room key, and asked if there was a working ice machine. Joseph said they joked about the place feeling like something out of an old movie. He gave them room 217, one of the few with functioning power and plumbing. It was the same room Evelyn Brighton had slept in as a child. According to the police report, Daniel and Claire checked in at 9:43 p.m. At 10:17, a nearby guest, one of only 3 others staying that night, complained of hearing someone crying softly through the vents. Joseph checked but found nothing. At 11:52, a delivery driver passing by on the highway saw a light flicker on in the top right window of the building, followed by a silhouette moving across the curtains. At 2:17 a.m., the service bell at the front desk rang 3 times. Joseph said he thought it was a prank. He called up to room 217 to check, but the line went dead before anyone spoke. The next morning, the couple's car was still parked outside. The room door was locked from the inside. When police arrived, they found the bed made, the TV still on, and 2 half-drunk cups of coffee on the nightstand. The bathroom mirror was fogged as if someone had just taken a shower, but no one was there. The only clue was Claire's travel journal found beneath the bed. The final entry, dated that night, read, "Something whispers when the lights go out." Detective Mark Hewitt, who led the investigation, said the case never made sense. There were no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints beyond the couple's own, and no trace of them leaving the property. Cadaver dogs reacted near the old basement door, but when it was forced open, they refused to go inside. The air, officers said, was unnaturally cold. Their flashlights dimmed as they descended the stairs, and one deputy swore he heard a child's laughter echo through the darkness. When they reached the bottom, they found nothing but old furniture, broken glass, and ash. The official report listed the couple as missing persons. Privately, though, Hewitt admitted the case haunted him. He told a local journalist years later that he still dreamed of that room. "The smell never left me," he said, "like iron and rain, like something old." He also mentioned something that wasn't in the report, a set of small wet footprints on the hallway carpet outside room 217. They measured just 7 inches long, too small for any adult. After the disappearance, the Brighton was condemned. Police tape hung across the doors for months, fluttering in the wind. Locals avoided it altogether. A few vandals broke in and stole what they could. Old furniture, faded signage, but most left shaken, claiming the building didn't want them there. One teenager who explored the place in 1992 told a friend he heard the service bell ring as he was leaving. When he turned back, he saw a girl standing behind the counter smiling. She looked wet, he said, like she just climbed out of water. He refused to go near the hotel again. The Morris case went cold within a year. Their families received no ransom calls, no sightings, nothing. Then in 1993, during renovation work near the back lot, a construction crew uncovered an old drainage tunnel that connected to the hotel's basement. Inside, they found a rusted child's tricycle and what appeared to be a section of the original well, sealed with concrete decades earlier. When workers broke the seal to inspect it, the air that escaped was freezing, almost mist-like. One worker collapsed moments later, claiming he couldn't breathe. They closed the site immediately. A week later, the county surveyor filed a note in his log. Structure unsafe, foundation unstable, recommend no further excavation. But handwritten beneath it in shaky letters was an added line, voices beneath. The handwriting didn't match his. For years after that, the Brighton remained untouched, a relic standing against the woods, its sign tilting, its windows blind with dust. Travelers who took the old highway route swore they could still see a single light burning in the upstairs window. Always the same one. Always room 217. In 2005, a group of urban explorers entered the property and filmed what would become infamous on early internet forums. The footage, later dubbed the Brighton tape, shows a grainy walk through the halls, the camera flickering as the group laughs and jokes. Around the 13-minute mark, the laughter stops. One of them says, "Wait, who's that?" The camera pans down the corridor, and for just a second, a shape crosses the end of the hallway. Small, fast, and wet. The group runs. The last words on the recording are, "The bell's ringing." Then silence. Experts later analyzed the video and concluded it wasn't edited. The sound of the bell matches the hotel's original 1950s desk model, the kind with a single brass chime. That particular bell was recovered years later from the ruins of the hotel. It was corroded, but when pressed, it still rang clearly. The Brighton Hotel never reopened. It stands fenced off now, sinking slowly into the Texas dirt, its legend growing with every retelling. But for those who remember that September night in 1989, the story isn't legend. It's evidence, because once you've seen the empty room, the coffee still warm, and the notebook lying open to that last line, something whispers when the lights go out. It's hard to tell yourself it was just a story. And if you drive past the ruins on a cold Texas night and see a faint light flicker through the trees, don't stop. Don't look back. Because some guests, even after all these years, still haven't checked out. Because some guests, even after all these years, still haven't checked out. For years after the Morris disappearance, the Brighton Hotel remained fenced off, swallowed slowly by vines and silence. Locals said it was haunted, but officials called it a structural hazard, a polite way of saying no one wanted to go near it. By the early 2000s, time had nearly erased it from memory, until the internet found it again. In 2005, after the Brighton tape leaked online, the legend returned with a vengeance. Paranormal message boards lit up with theories. Some claimed the footage captured the ghost of Evelyn Brighton. Others believed the building was a thin place, a spot where the barrier between the living and the dead had worn thin. But for a handful of people, it wasn't about ghosts. It was about proof. In 2008, a Houston-based journalist named Leah Sanders decided to investigate the Brighton for a feature on Texas's forgotten landmarks. She was a skeptic, sharp, grounded, with a background in crime reporting. According to her notes, she spent 2 nights in Huntsville interviewing locals. One man, a retired sheriff's deputy, told her about the night of the Morris disappearance. He said the strangest thing wasn't the missing couple, it was the sound. It wasn't silence, he said. It was like the whole building was holding its breath. Leah laughed when she first heard that, but she didn't laugh after visiting the property herself. Her audio recorder, later released online, captured something eerie. As she approached the front steps, her microphone picked up a steady hum, almost like low-frequency static. It faded when she spoke, but returned whenever she was quiet. At the 2-minute mark, she whispered, "It's colder here." Then there's a faint sound and a single ding like a bell. She says softly, "That's not funny, guys." But she was alone. The recording ends abruptly. Leah made it back to her car and left immediately. In her published article, she described the Brighton as a place that feels like it's listening to you breathe. A year later, She returned with a cameraman and 2 local guides. This time, they entered the building. The footage was never broadcast in full, but fragments survive, enough to piece together what happened. The team moved through the lobby, flashlights cutting through layers of dust. The chandelier still hung from the ceiling, swaying slightly, though there was no wind. The front desk remained intact, the guest book still open. The cameraman zoomed in on the last entry, the name E. Brighton, written in ink that hadn't faded. Then, as Leah approached the staircase, the sound came back, that same low hum rising slowly, almost like breathing. She turned her flashlight toward the upper landing, and for a split second, the beam caught a reflection, a pair of eyes watching from the darkness. The camera fell, the team ran. They made it out without injuries, but the cameraman later quit journalism entirely. Leah refused to talk about that night. When asked later in an interview what she saw, she just said, "It wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a ghost." Over the next decade, the Brighton attracted thrill seekers, paranormal investigators, and amateur filmmakers, most leaving with nothing but shaky footage and nervous laughter. But a few captured moments that defied explanation. In 2011, a group from Dallas posted a short video showing the hallway outside room 217. The lights flicker, and a small shadow moves across the floor, shaped like a child crawling. The footage cuts out, then returns with a single frame of the hallway empty again. The video spread fast, but it was removed within weeks after the group reported receiving threatening emails telling them to leave the dead alone. Meanwhile, police reports resurfaced. Old files from the Morris case that had been marked missing since 1990. An anonymous clerk leaked them to a Huntsville historian. Inside were grainy black and white photos of the Brighton's basement, taken during the original search. One shows a wall covered in soot with faint handprints pressed into the surface. Dozens of them, all child-sized. Another image shows a small wooden door near the foundation, chained shut from the outside. Written on the door in chalk were the words, "Don't open. She sleeps." Investigators dismissed the leak as a hoax, but handwriting analysis later revealed that the chalk writing matched that of Richard Brighton, the hotel's original owner. That discovery reignited interest in the theory that he'd known about something hidden beneath the hotel. Some speculated the well had never been sealed properly. Others believed the Brighton family had tried to trap something, and failed. In 2013, a documentary team attempted to film inside for a streaming pilot called Texas Haunts, Forgotten Places. The project was canceled halfway through production. Crew members claimed their equipment malfunctioned. Batteries drained instantly. Microphones picked up faint voices, and one camerawoman fainted after reporting someone whispering my name. The director later gave an interview saying, "It wasn't like a haunting. It was like being inside something alive." After that, the county fenced off the property completely. Trespassing fines were doubled, and warning signs were posted, though locals said people still heard noises at night. Soft humming, distant laughter, and occasionally the faint ringing of a bell. Truckers passing on Highway 19 claimed to see lights moving through the trees. Hunters heard children's voices near the riverbed, even though no families lived within miles. One local pastor described it best. "It's like the ground itself remembers too much." In 2019, a small fire broke out near the old hotel's foundation, burning for nearly 6 hours despite having no fuel source. When firefighters arrived, they reported seeing light inside the upper window. Just one, faint and steady. Room 217. Afterward, the structure was declared unsafe for human entry. But as one firefighter said in his report, "When we were leaving, the bell at the front desk rang once. And maybe that's the strangest thing about the Brighton Hotel. The stories don't die. They just wait," whispered from one generation to the next, from one late-night radio caller to another. Because some places, no matter how long they stand empty, never stop checking in new souls. Because some places, no matter how long they stand empty, never stop checking in new souls. After the 2019 fire, the Brighton Hotel should have been erased. Another ruin claimed by time. But the blaze only deepened the mystery. When investigators examined the site, they found something that shouldn't have survived. A section of wall in the basement untouched by flame. Embedded in the plaster was a photograph, melted at the edges but still visible. It showed a family standing in the hotel lobby sometime in the 1950s. The man was Richard Brighton, smiling stiffly beside his wife. Between them stood a little girl, her hair tied with a ribbon. But when experts digitally enhanced the image, another figure appeared in the background. Faint, half hidden in the mirror behind them. A second child. No record of a second daughter ever existed. The discovery reignited public obsession with the Brighton. News outlets ran pieces calling it Texas's Hotel of Shadows. Ghost hunters swarmed Huntsville again, even though police warned that the structure was near collapse. Online forums buzzed with theories. Some said the extra child in the photo was Evelyn's imaginary friend. Others believed the Brightons had adopted a local orphan and hidden her existence after the disappearance. But the people who grew up in Huntsville whispered something else. That Evelyn had a twin. One buried beneath the hotel, one still wandering inside it. In 2020, a private investigator named Alan Cooper reopened the Morris case on his own time. A retired detective, he'd heard stories about the missing couple since childhood and wanted closure. His files, later found in his home office, detail months of quiet research. He tracked down Joseph Ray, the front desk clerk who'd worked the night Daniel and Claire vanished. Ray, then in his late 70s, still lived near Huntsville. He told Cooper that he'd never forgiven himself for giving them that room. When pressed why, Ray said, "She asked for it." Cooper asked who. Ray replied, "The little girl." Cooper's notes claim that Ray insisted he'd seen a small girl in the lobby around sunset that evening, dripping wet, silent, holding a room key. He thought she was a local playing a prank. "She pointed upstairs," he said. "I just followed what she wanted." Cooper wrote that Ray seemed confused, almost frightened of his own memory. A week after that interview, Ray died in his sleep. His son reported that when he cleared out the house, he found an old hotel key on his father's nightstand, tarnished brass, with the number 217 etched into it. In late 2020, Cooper entered the Brighton property without permission. His car was found the next morning by the fence, engine still warm, driver's door open. Inside, his recorder was running. The tape is almost an hour long, filled mostly with static, his footsteps echoing through the halls. At the 32-minute mark, he whispers, "There's water on the floor." Then silence. A faint humming begins, rhythmic like a lullaby. Near the end, he says softly, "She's not alone." The tape cuts off mid-breath. Cooper was never found. The story made national headlines for a few weeks before fading again, lost among bigger tragedies. But Huntsville never forgot. The county finally sealed the property entirely, welding metal sheets over the doors and marking it condemned beyond recovery. Yet locals still report activity. A retired fire captain told a journalist in 2022 that he saw light moving inside while driving home one night. "I thought it was kids with flashlights," he said. "Then I realized the glow was coming from the inside out, like the walls themselves were shining." That same year, a researcher from Sam Houston State University conducted a ground-penetrating radar survey near the property for an unrelated study. The machine picked up several irregular shapes below the surface, narrow cavities running beneath the hotel foundation, leading toward the old well site. The reading suggested one of the tunnels was recently disturbed. When the team tried to go back for a second scan, their equipment malfunctioned. They never returned. By 2023, the Brighton had become folklore again, the kind of place teenagers dared each other to visit. Videos circulated of brave explorers cutting through the fence, their flashlights shaking as they crept through the ruins. Most ended abruptly, and either the footage went black or the explorers ran out screaming. But one video, uploaded anonymously, gained millions of views before it was removed. In it, the cameraman walks into what was once the front lobby. The chandelier still hangs above, swaying gently. He moves closer, whispering, "There's no wind." Then the camera turns toward the front desk. The old bell sits there, covered in dust. Without anyone touching it, it rings once, clear, sharp, and lonely. The screen goes black. Experts tried to trace the uploader, but the account vanished within hours. Only one frame from the footage was recovered, a reflection in the lobby mirror. It shows the outline of a small child standing beside the cameraman, her face turned toward him, her eyes black as the night outside. Some say the Brighton has become a kind of echo chamber, replaying the moments that broke it, the laughter of guests, the cries, the silence that followed. Others believe the land beneath it feeds on memory itself, keeping those who die there suspended between what was and what should have been. But whatever it is, it hasn't stopped. Residents in nearby homes still hear the faint sound of a piano playing through the woods, though no one has ever found an instrument inside. And every so often when the moon is low, someone driving down Highway 19 swears they see a woman standing in the upstairs window, her hand pressed to the glass, waiting for someone to notice. They say that if you stop and stare too long, the light flickers once, twice, and then goes out completely. They say that if you stop and stare too long, the light flickers and once, twice, and then goes out completely. For most people, That's where the story ends, with whispers and flickering lights on a forgotten highway. But for Huntsville locals, the Brighton Hotel never really disappeared. It just became quieter, more selective about who it reveals itself to. The county eventually gave up trying to tear it down. Every demolition crew that's tried has either quit or reported accidents before the first wall could fall. One foreman told the Walker County Chronicle that his team refused to go back after their tools went missing overnight. "We locked the truck," he said. "When we came back in the morning, every hammer was laid out neatly on the front steps, wet." Others described hearing a voice, a child's voice, asking, "Are you checking in?" The stories are always the same, polite, curious, innocent, but the voice never comes from where it should. Sometimes it's right behind them. Sometimes it's inside their own head. By 2024, the hotel was nothing more than a hollow shell. The roof caved in, the wallpaper rotting in strips. Yet inside, strange things kept happening. Paranormal researchers who placed motion sensors outside the property said their devices triggered at 2:17 a.m. exactly, every single night. Even when no wind, no animals, and no humans were nearby. One night, a thermal camera captured what looked like a figure standing by the upstairs window. When they checked the footage frame by frame, the figure didn't move, but its reflection in the window did. When word of these new recordings spread online, journalists and skeptics arrived in waves. One, a podcaster named Michael Reyes, decided to record a live special outside the hotel gates. In his broadcast, he told the story of Evelyn Brighton and the Morris couple, trying to separate fact from fiction. Halfway through his segment, listeners reported hearing an extra voice whisper something under his narration, a faint, childlike giggle. Michael swore there was no one else there, but when he reviewed his tape later that night, he noticed something else. Between his own words, buried deep in the static, came a whisper, "Stay." A week later, his equipment vanished from his car. His laptop was found months later in a pawn shop in Conroe. The last audio file on it was named 217.mp3. The contents were nothing but silence, except for the final 2 seconds and a distant ringing bell. The Brighton story isn't one of monsters or curses. It's a story about memory. How some places hold on tighter than people ever could. Maybe it began with grief, maybe with guilt, or maybe, as some locals believe, the land itself remembers what was buried beneath it. There are rumors that the site sits over an unmarked burial ground dating back to the 1800s, victims of disease, forgotten prisoners, unnamed children. No documents confirm it, but the ground tells its own story in whispers and echoes. And if you stand close enough to the rusted gate on a quiet night, some say you can still hear them. The faint clinking of keys, the rustle of sheets, the soft hum of someone trying to remember a song they once knew. One final photograph, taken by a passing trucker in late 2024, seems to close the loop. It shows the Brighton in silhouette just before dawn, smoke rising from the roof like breath. In the top right window, the faint glow of light. And in that light, the outline of a man and a woman standing together, holding hands facing out. When experts examined it, they noticed something else. A small figure standing between them. 3 shapes. All still. All watching. The trucker swears the photo hasn't been altered. "It was like they were saying goodbye," he said. But the thing about the Brighton is that goodbyes never last. A week after that photo surfaced, the light in room 217 was seen again. Same brightness, same flicker. And when the wind carried through the broken lobby doors, neighbors claimed they heard the sound of the old desk bell ringing. Once softly, as if someone had just arrived. The Brighton Hotel still stands on the edge of Highway 19. Its windows shattered, its doors sealed, but time hasn't touched the stories carved into its bones. Every creak, every echo, every flicker of light reminds us that some places aren't haunted by ghosts at all. They're haunted by moments. By the things that happened and the things that never should have. And maybe that's why even now people who pass it at night say the same thing. They don't see ghosts. They see movement. A silhouette in the window, a child by the door, a woman waiting by the bell. Not monsters. Just memories. Still trapped. Still searching for someone who'll listen. If you ever find yourself driving through Huntsville after dark, and you notice an old brick building standing alone in the distance, don't stop. Keep your eyes on the road, because the Brighton Hotel is still there. Watching, waiting, wondering who will check in next. Some places don't fade with time. They hold on, quietly, like they're afraid to be forgotten. Maybe that's what the Brighton Hotel has become. Not a haunted building, but a memory that refuses to die. If you had the chance to walk through its halls, to stand in front of room 217 and listen for that bell, Would you dare to stay one night? Tell me in the comments below. And if you believe some stories are too real to stay buried, subscribe for tomorrow's tale, because the next one might be closer than you think.